Welcome to the first Fans in Train podcast. My name is Ashley DeCruz, and I got Brendan Riggin, who's the co-host here as well. Each podcast, we're going to kind of talk a bit about the Fans in Training program and the Hockey Fans in Training program from the pilot study that we conducted with two OHL teams, the London Knights and the Sarnia Sting, back in 2015. And then after that, we're going to talk a little bit about sport, which is obviously a passion of Brendan and I's, whether that's the NHL, the OHL, or other sports. So just going to start off by handing you over to Brendan. Brendan will introduce himself, and then I'll introduce myself, and then we'll get started talking about the program.
Great, thanks, Ash. So my name is Brendan Riggin, and I'm an assistant coach with the University of Western Ontario men's hockey team. To give you a bit of a background, as Ash mentioned, I was one of the original coach of the site in Sarnia when we ran our first Hockey Fans in Training program. And back then I was actually one of the coaches of the Greater Ontario Junior Hockey League, so the head coach of the Strathroy Rockets at the time. So I have a little bit of a hockey background and specifically coaching, but really enjoyed being involved in Hockey Fans in Training and excited to get the program rolled out in other sites as well.
Perfect. Yeah. So, as I mentioned, my name is Ashley DeCruz, and I was one of the coaches for the London Knights program, that arm of the study. So, my role, my background is in coaching mainly. I did my undergraduate in the UK in sports science and coaching studies, a lot of soccer coaching mainly, and then moving on to sort of lifestyle coaching as well. So that's kind of how Brendan and I got to know each other and how we were involved in the program. So, Brendan, I'm going to start by kind of asking you about your role as a coach within the program and kind of things you enjoyed about it. And we'll just have a kind of an informal discussion about our experiences. It's been a couple of years now since we concluded the program, but we're starting up with different teams and different sports. So kind of an overview of the program for those people that aren't maybe too sure of what happened and your role as a coach and how you found it.
Well, I really didn't know what to expect. I mean, I was passionate about the program the minute I heard about it, but I wasn't sure how it was going to be once we actually delivered it. So it's a program designed for overweight men who are looking to try and improve their lifestyle and try to live a little bit healthier. So whether that means eating more nutritionally or getting more physical activity, anything that we can do to sort of help motivate and encourage that behavior is really the premise behind it. And what made it unique was it's a program specifically for hockey fans. So it made it kind of neat that everyone was there, all very like-minded men who were passionate about their respective local junior hockey teams. So once we started rolling it out, as I said, I wasn't sure how it was going to be delivered, but there's a few things that I came across in my experience delivering it that I thought was even cooler than I was originally expecting. So many of the men, as they were going through the program, they were telling me about how they were trying to pass along some of the information that we talked about in class to their family members. So whether that was their spouse or maybe it was their children. And what I mean by that was if the men were trying to eat healthier, then it meant at home, when the rest of the family was eating, they were also trying to adapt these practices. So it made it kind of unique knowing that everything that we were telling the same group of men that were coming back each week might have had a bit of a snowball effect to other members within the community as well. And that even passed along to some of the co-workers. So some of the men involved in the program would come back and say, I'm having a bit of a competition to see who can get the most number of steps this week between myself and my buddy at work, or maybe it was a teammate with their recreational hockey team.
Yeah, and I think you touched on a really good point there. The trickle-down effect of these men passing on their habits that they're learning from the program to their families, their co-workers, their friends was huge, because we recruited men for the point that men aren't really interested in research from some of the studies we've done, and also tough to recruit. And on the flip side of that, not often recruited. Women are more often recruited for research studies. So targeting men and that information that we're feeding to them, excuse the pun, but giving to the men, and then they were taking that home and passing on to their families was crucial. And I think down the line, incorporating families directly into programs as well is going to be something that we really look into. So, Brendan, as you know, some of the results we found in the study were pretty remarkable. After 12 sessions, we found that the men had lost about 8 pounds per each. Their blood pressure reduced significantly, comparable to a drug. They were increasing their walking. Now, kind of those sort of things we wanted to see, and we kind of expected 12 weeks of a program where they're being told information and taught. We kind of expected to see those things, but the big thing was at 12 months when we got those guys back that they were still keeping to those habits. They weren't in sessions, but they were still losing weight, or at least staying at the same weight they were after they completed the program. Still walking more. Their blood pressure had stayed consistent as well. So, why do you think that was, Brendan? Like, why do you think that these guys? There was some stickiness to these results, and why do you think they're still doing it 9 months after the program?
Well, I think it was embedded in the program, and it was something that you and I really tried to encourage as well, was that this needs to be really a lifestyle change, and it needs to happen one small piece at a time. So I know a lot of the men had told me when they first came to the program that they've tried various diets before, and a lot of them are quick weight loss things, but they're not really sustainable long term. So maybe they lost a few pounds for a couple of weeks, and then eventually something happened in their life, which happens to everyone, where they kind of get off track, and then all of a sudden they're back to their original weight and their original eating habits again. So what I think was embedded in hockey fans in training, and as I said, something that you and I really tried to encourage, is that it's about making small lifestyle changes that are attainable and realistic, and then building on those. So even if you do have a setback, you can kind of take a step back, think about maybe what happened in the past week that prevented you from getting the number of step counts that you wanted, or maybe from eating as healthy as you were planning, and then you can reevaluate and get back on track right away. So it's really about making small changes and trying to build on those over a period of time. And I think that's really why we're able to see that so many men were able to maintain that weight loss and these positive changes, was because it's about small, sustainable lifestyle changes.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like, the program's not a diet. In terms of the food and the nutritional intake, it was about making those small changes. So having milk in your coffee instead of cream, and having one sugar instead of two, making those changes that over the long run can last. And the same with the physical activity and the exercise, trying to increase steps by small amounts over a course of 12 weeks and going forward is something that I think really is a benefit to get these men to last, results to last.
And a lot of the men came up with these ideas themselves. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we would offer out suggestions in the program, but some of the things that ended up helping people the most were ideas that they came up themselves. So what might work for one person, with them sharing with the group each week, helped a lot of other people as well, as they were able to implement those recommendations too. So it wasn't just coming from the coaches, but it was kind of neat to see that other people within the group were supporting one another and trying to offer up unique and innovative ways that can try and get each other to be healthier.
Yeah, and it kind of leads us on nicely to the feedback from the men on their experiences in the study. I know from London, and Sarnia, but being the coach in London, the feedback was extremely positive, in the sense that the London Knights were involved in the program. The men loved that they could go into the arena and the sessions took place in the locker room, and they got to meet players and coaching staff, etc. And on the other side of that, the feedback in terms of the study and the results they were getting, they really enjoyed those small bite-sized pieces of information on how to change things small in small numbers. So from your experience in Sarnia, was it kind of reflective of the London feedback from the men as well, or
Definitely.
was it slightly different?
No, I think it was very similar in Sarnia, and I know one of the things that many of them told me, at least informally, that they appreciated was everything that we were telling them was based in science. So it wasn't like we were just coming up with this, but it was realistic and something that they could understand. So it wasn't using any terminology that might have been over their head, and it wasn't using sort of fancy terms to try and bombard them with information. So we really tried to keep it sort of at a level where everyone can understand what we're talking about and can relate to it as well.
Perfect. Yeah. So that's kind of given us a broad overview of the program and the results we found in our feedback as coaches and a little bit as researchers as well. So for a little bit of fun, as I mentioned off the top of the running order here, is we're going to talk a little bit about hockey or sport as well. So something that Brendan and I are passionate about, and something that Brendan's been involved in for years and years and years, and has a family tradition of hockey. And obviously, since I moved to Canada, it's been something that I fell in love with as well. So, Brendan, we're about almost 2 weeks into the NHL season. As a Leafs fan, it's going pretty well. I know you're.
As a Red Wings fan, it's not going as well.
Yeah. I mean, so how do you see the season so far? How's it going?
A lot of surprises so far. I mean, I don't think anyone would have expected to see Vegas as a franchise or an expansion team doing as well as they are.
The Fleury injury is big, though.
It is, yeah. But James Neal has been playing really well, and I think they're surprising quite a few people around the league. If you ask me about the Leafs, and I can say this, I'm biased because I'm not a fan, I thought they were good last year. They put up a good fight against Washington Capitals in the playoffs, and they had for the most part, all their guys returning again this year with a little bit more experience. So I think they're the real deal, and obviously that gives the Leaf fans something to look forward to for the rest of the season here.
Yeah, I do too, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, we're the day after the Leafs just won against the Capitals last night, and one of the big things I noticed this year is they're actually doing well in overtime.
Yeah.
Matthews has got 2 overtime winners. They haven't got to a shootout so far. That's going to be the interesting thing because their record in shootouts last year was pretty tough. But they look good, and one of the surprising things this year is the Oilers. What the hell's going wrong with the Oilers?
I know. I think quite a few people had them as maybe the Stanley Cup contenders this year, but with only 1 win so far in the season, it's not looking like it's starting off on the right foot for them. I don't have an answer for you, Ash. I don't know what's going on out there. They got the talent, obviously, with one of the best players in the world. And maybe, I hate to blame goaltenders, being a former one myself, but maybe Cam Talbot just is going through a bit of a rough patch now, and I think he's going to turn things around. And once you get good goaltending, and having someone like Connor McDavid doesn't hurt as well.
You're right. I mean, like you saw what Anderson did to the Leafs when he came in a couple of years ago, and having a good goaltender is half the trouble, I think. So in the junior ranks, obviously, as we've mentioned, we had the Sting and the Knights in the program. One, as we're Western University students and employees here, we're obviously based in London, and we had Sting, which was about 45 minutes down the road. Now, they're after pretty different seasons. I was actually looking at the standings yesterday. They're 10 games in. Knights have won 1 and lost the rest. The Sting have lost 1 and won the rest. So, I mean, Sting at top of the league, Knights are at the bottom. Pretty surprising, eh? The Knights are normally always challenging. So what's going wrong there?
Definitely. Well, being from London, I've had the pleasure of getting to watch them my whole life, and I can say this is one of the worst starts I've seen them get off to so far, but that might be a product of being successful for so many years, Ash. I mean, they have been to the Memorial Cup and won it a few times as well, so eventually not having all those draft picks is going to catch up to you, but I have faith in the organization. I think they'll be able to turn things around, but it sure doesn't make for the same rivalry watching the Sting and the Knights play, because that used to always be one of the best games of the year.
Yeah, the Sting with 8 wins in a row as well. You don't really see that in hockey. Normally a team will throw one every now and then, but 8 wins in a row is pretty impressive. Just seems like they've got a good group of players there this year.
Yeah, and I mean they have a good coaching staff in place as well with former NHLers behind the bench, so that's certainly going to help as well. But it'll be interesting to see how things unfold over the next 50 or 60 games here for both clubs.
For sure. So we'll kind of wrap this up with... we haven't spoken yet about... I presume you've got a fantasy team this year?
I do have a fantasy team.
So Brennan and I are avid fantasy players. Talk to me about your team. What's good? What's bad? Who was your first pick?
Well, we changed our format this year, so we actually did a keeper league where there's 10 players from our fantasy team last year that are allowed to remain on your team for this year. So I went heavy on the Washington Capitals, and that's sort of the team that I've been either riding or dying with for the past few years. So having Ovechkin start off with, I think he's got 8 or 9 goals already.
And back-to-back hat tricks?
Yeah, I mean, that certainly helped the fantasy team there.
Yep.
My one maybe disappointment was I traded for Carey Price in the offseason, and he's got 1 win so far. I mean, he might be one of the best goalies in the league, but if his forwards and defensemen can't put any goals up front, then it's going to make it pretty tough for the Canadians to get a win. How about you, Ash?
Yeah, I mean... I had a blessing in disguise because I was gung ho on. I had 10th pick, and I was gung ho on taking Carey Price if he got there, and luckily he didn't, and I got Holtby instead. So I took Holtby, and I got on the Washington Capitals. I got Kuznetsov as well, and he's having a good season. But yeah, I'm pretty pleased with the team. My three goalies are Schneider, Holtby, and Crawford. I've never been a big Crawford fan, but he's good for the wins.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think I got a pretty balanced team, although I'm 0-1 right now. So hopefully this week will be a little bit better.
Yeah, I got Carey Price, Holtby, and Dubnyk out in Minnesota. So 3 pretty good goaltenders that I was happy with. I wanted to start from the net and move out.
Good. All right, so that's going to bring us to an end of the first podcast. We'll be doing these every so often, and again, talking a little bit about our experiences with the Fans in Training program, and then a little bit about sport, a little bit of fun towards the end there. So thanks a lot, and I guess you'll hear from us again soon.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. Be sure to visit our website at hockeyfansintraining.org and on social media, Twitter and Instagram at HockeyFit2014 and Facebook and LinkedIn at Hockey Fans in Training. Thanks again.